We talk a lot, we do talk a lot about mental health on this podcast. The best thing for my mental health is to be busy. And I'm not talking about just being busy work-wise, being busy with the kids, busy with my wife, busy with my jobs, busy with my businesses. It's when I'm not busy that I have an issue. And I think for some people, this just works. Just being relentlessly full on, that's when I know that I am at my happiest and that my mental health is at its most stable.
It goes back to that sense of fulfillment, doesn't it? An achievement. And it doesn't matter what you're achieving. Like you said, if you're playing with your kids, if you're doing this, you're getting this project done, you've done that meeting, you've gone to the gym. Oh, I've achieved something today. I find it hilarious how people overthink things. I was talking to someone the other day and he was like, I was just, oh God, I'm just thinking like, what if that happens? I'm like, you're so far away from that happening. I mean, you've got so much in the middle, and when I talked about, I ran a marathon once, right? Because my dad ran a lot and he always took the mick out of me. I often liken it to running a marathon. If you set on that start line, and you think, right, if I just once I run through that, imagine, and it's like, whoa, you got 26 of these little buggers to overcome, right? And every one is a short-term strategy, is a short-term goal, and is something to overcome. So in any project, in any straight line to success or fulfillment, you've got all these mile markers to get over. And guess what? If you don't get over mile marker 4, you ain't getting there. And by the way, if you don't get over mile marker 25, you ain't getting there either. So don't worry. Don't overthink things. Don't keep things simple.
See, there's a writer called Ben Brown that talks about this messy middle of change. The idea that, we remember the excitement of the start and the exhilaration of getting to the end, but it's that messy middle, that bit in the middle where you're too far in to go back. You're not far enough to see the end, where people get despondent, people give up. And I think what your great strength is, whether it's you describing that night at Wembley with Joshua and Klitschko, or the Groves and Frock night, that you get through that middle bit, don't you? I think your real strength is your perseverance to
Yeah, because I think, again, that goes back to not getting carried away with yourself and just keeping your nut down and grafting day by day. You wouldn't believe in a show like that how many problems you have to face every single day.
Yeah.
Could be someone fighter on the undercards got injured, or there's a secure. I mean, before AJ against Klitschko at Wembley, I think 3 weeks before was the Manchester Arena bombing. And all of a sudden, the challenges that we face there from a protecting the public to security to terrorist alerts to policing, it was just it was so easy in those moments just to go, all right, let's postpone.
Yeah.
We just can't get this over the line. And I think what you talked about there about that messy middle, there's so many. How many people fail at the messy middle bit? I mean, 99.9%?
And
how many people? Yeah, because people start off, oh, I'm going to do this today. I see it all the time. Start a business. Yeah. Right, next thing, oh, blimey. All right, you got to go and get an accountant. Right, you got to file a VAT return. Right, you got to register the business. Right, you got to open a bank account. Right, yeah. And these are things before, all they're thinking about is, imagine when we're on sale. Oh, and people are coming in the shop. It's like, you do know, you got a marathon to run before you open a shop. Oh, have we? Oh, blimey, I don't know anything about VAT. Oh, I went to the bank and they're telling me it's going to take 2 weeks to open an account. Oh, actually, do you know what? It's like, you're a dreamer, mate. And I think that's the difference between like go-getters and listen, sometimes I'll start things that I don't finish. It's not like I complete everything I set out to do. But I think, another great saying is, if you want something so badly, you'll find a way to do it. And if not, you'll find an excuse.
Yep.
And that's the easy thing to do. There's so many people that think that.
Go on.
No, there's so many people that think, they see the bigger picture and the end result, they're not prepared to put in the hard yards.
Have a listen, if you get a chance, to the interview we did with Johnny Wilkinson. It was the final episode of the second series. And he talks about in that just being totally in the moment, being present completely. And that is actually a really helpful tool. So when you're having this conversation with us, don't be thinking about that deal you've got to do or that fight you've got to organise. Be totally plugged in, totally engaged in this. And then when you're in that meeting afterwards, then you are totally plugged into that conversation about the fight. And then when your wife rings you to say what time you're going to be home, you're totally engaged with her and then engaged with the kids. It's such a powerful tool because then you're so in the moment, you're so engaged with everything and everyone. It's a completely passionate way of living, which I think is what you've spoken about a lot.
Yeah, that is difficult though. Because I do find, I find myself,
difficult but rewarding.
My mind's a little bit all over the place. Where sometimes, I have to be honest. I've had a couple of conversations in this part where I've gone, oh, You know, I've mentioned something to you and it's reminded me that we've got to announce that fight today, you know, and stuff like that. So it's very difficult.
I think that a helpful
that's a great
thought, though?
Yeah, but that's a great mindset of relationships with your family, because sometimes my wife will do it all the time. She'll go, right, you know, I went up to school today and I spoke to him, and, you know, I'm going, right, okay, I've got that conference call at 9 o'clock. Or she'll go to me, what did I say? I said, sorry, what's that? She goes, what did I just say? I go, about the school. What about the school? And I'm like, oh. And she goes, you are just, you know, you're away non-stop. Can't you just listen to me for 5 minutes when you're home? I'm like, yes, sorry.
I recognise this conversation.
I know. But it's like, again, when you have to be obsessed. You do have to be obsessed with what you're trying to achieve. And it's difficult because, you know, I'm like, yeah, but it's always like, can't you handle that? And let me just go back to work. That's just what I've got to do, you know.
But going back to the social media thing we spoke about earlier, Eddie, just when you mentioned that line there about being obsessed, my mind immediately went to some of the criticisms that we've had on social media of people that have heard previous guests feel that when they talk about obsession, that we're advocating it, and therefore people say, well, that's not a healthy mindset to have. So what advice would you give to anybody about managing that obsession? Because I think that's an important point, that just not letting it run away out of control.
I think it is dangerous, and I think you just have to accept that having an obsession can't give you the perfect life. It can't give you the rounded life. You know, you can't be a great husband. You can't be a great father all of the time. You can't be a great person. You can't be happy all the time. You know, you can't not be rude at some point, even if you're, you know, one thing I hate more than anything is people that are rude to people. But sometimes, you know, when you're so just blinkered by everything, you probably are a bit rude and arrogant. You know, sometimes I don't think there's any way around it. I think it is dangerous, and I think you do have to be careful. And I think, but there's just no, you know, I've never met an obsessed, driven individual that's just great in every way. Like, who is great in every way.
So who calls you out on it then, Eddie, then? So I'm going to guess your dad is one of them, but he almost suffers from some of the same drives that you do. So who do you listen to that when they call you out and say, Eddie, you need to wind your neck in here, that you sit up and pay attention?
I think probably the missus, yeah. Do you know what? My mum as well. You know, my mum is so brutal. I mean, I was around there last night and she went, I watched you on League of Their Own the other day. And I went, oh, my. She went, you are so fat. You've really put on some weight. You know, and I was like, Mum, you are so brutal, lovely. Right? You know, like I'm 42, but I know, you know, she's right? Yeah. And she wouldn't say it if it were. And I'm like, yeah, I know, Mum, you know, but actually I've had COVID, so I've actually lost 10 pounds. So it's like, it's a good news, you know. No. I saw you get up to, I think you were kicking a football. I thought, look at his belly. I was like, oh, you know, but that's our family. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like my dad will say to me all the time, don't get carried away. Don't believe the hype here, you know. Like, he'll look at what, all right, listen, stay calm. I'll go, Dad, you know, we've done this, I've done this deal, and we're doing this fight. Oh, well done. And we'll do the show. How good was that, Dad? That was unbelievable. But listen, just stay calm, you know. And that's always been sort of bred into me. So I'll never feel like I get too big for my boots or like start swanning around thinking I've cracked it. And actually, I think if people knew how big a critic I was of what I do, then not saying they'd feel sorry for me, but they would be quite surprised, because the perception is, oh, he's, you know, showman, flash Harry, look, oh yeah, you know, big show, big crowd, razzmatazz. But actually, it's like I'm definitely my own biggest critic, and I'm actually quite pessimistic. But I think that pessimism comes with just trying to manage disappointment. Because there won't be a day when I wake up where there isn't disappointment on my phone from something, right? Could be, hi, sorry, you know, I know we thought we had a deal, but that fighter's chose to go somewhere else. Sorry, it's off. You know, or, oh, so-and-so's failed a drugs test. That fight's off, you know. Or,
so you don't allow yourself to get too high with the highs or too low with the lows, right?
That's right, yeah. I think that's important. think that's really important, because you just have to try and stay balanced and consistent.
Which comes back to the first word you said.
Emotion, emotion is draining. And that also goes back to what you said earlier about Twitter, where you said, I feel like throw stones at me. It's like, okay, I get that point, but just be careful that you're not using emotion, because emotion's draining, right? And we mustn't use our emotions on things that don't affect our journey, right? So like those outside people on social media, they shouldn't even be anywhere near affecting your energy or your emotion or what you're thinking. Yeah. Now, we know it exists, right? And everyone deals with it in different ways. But you imagine if actually, like, I joke with my dad all the time where he says, oh, you're so lucky with social media. When I was doing shows, we'd be out underneath underground stations in the East End, fly posted, right? Now you've got the ability to interact with customers in your hand. It's so true, isn't it? Yeah. And I said, yeah, but Dad, you would do a show and you would go, that was the bollocks. And then you'd go and get a curry and have a few beers. I do a show and I've got 1 million people giving me their opinion.
Yep. Eddie.
Right.
There's only one way to avoid criticism, right? These are the words of Aristotle. Do nothing.
Yeah.
Say nothing. Be nothing.
Yeah.
The choice is yours. I think I know which one you might choose.
Yeah. I like that.
We're almost out of time. A couple of things I just want to run through with you. You spoke about the fact you're jealous of your dad because he built the business from scratch, and there is that element where you've inherited something and you've done brilliantly with it, but it's not necessarily yours. So what's your approach to risk taking? Why don't you go and set up a business totally separate from boxing, totally in a different world, and test yourself?
I think we're going to do that. I think we've done it. I mean, I think when I took over boxing was dead. He'd given up, really. He moved to darts and he said, I don't think it has a future. So, I run with that. I believed in that. And that was my little project that, again, I feel like I've done 30% of where I need to be. There's a lot more coming from me, outside of the comfort zone, and that will surprise people because I want to push the boundaries. But I'm not reckless. Although, again, we go back to the showman and the big mouth, I know what I'm doing. I know how to plan a business and plan a strategy. And my dad's a chartered accountant by trade. And that's something that's always been filtered into me by him as well. We know how to run a business. So, you get to a period where, back in February, we were talking about opening offices in Sydney and Hamburg and Toronto and launching a global expansion of Matchroom Boxing. Then the pandemic hits. Luckily, over the last 10 years, we've built huge amount of cash reserves, huge amount of credibility and stability to be able to ride these waves. My favorite quote, when you go back to quotes, is from Warren Buffett, who says that when the tide goes out, you get to see who's swimming naked.
Yes, Warren. Right?
And what that means is it's fine. Listen, when everything's going well and the market's strong and everyone's buying, spending money on TV rights and the crowds are flying in, you ain't got to be that great. Yeah. Now you got to be great. For anyone listening to this as a business owner or someone that's looking to make their mark in business, if you thought it was tough before, it's going to be 10 times tougher now. So you've got to be smarter, you've got to put more work in, but you still comes down to having that passion and drive and thinking on your feet. And, the only thing that matters is that you are happy. But for me, happiness comes from, of course, being happy at home, but also having a sense of fulfillment, of achievement. But don't be too caught up in, achievement is, making millions and millions and having this and that. No, achievement is waking up and being comfortable in yourself. That's the greatest feeling of all, actually, I think, is actually being comfortable in yourself. You're not worried about how you look or what people say, or, you're just
That is a superpower.
Yeah, it is.
Even when your mum tells you you're fat.
Yeah, I know. Well, I just go, no, I think you're right. But it is what it is, Mum. I like my food.
Final one that I want to talk about before we get to just a few quick fire questions is failure. We talk a lot on this podcast about having a really comfortable relationship with failure. The only way for you to know your limits is to fail at times. Are you comfortable with failure? Do you like failure? Do you seek it? Do you fail often? There'll be people listening to this who don't dare make a big decision because of the fear of failure.
I definitely hate failure. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's, again, playing a game of table tennis or whether it's staging an event. You have to accept that it exists, and, again, we've done plenty of sayings in this one. You never lose, you learn, right? So as long as you can learn from what went wrong in that moment, but also treat it like a sport, treat your business and treat your life like a sport. Right? You win and you lose. As long as you give everything, you come on that pitch. You're not always going to get the pats on the back if you lose. I didn't coming through. We talked about it earlier and we joked about it earlier, but understand that the wins will be so much more sweeter. right? And but I think that, you can't accept, I don't think you can accept failure. I don't think you should accept failure. I think you have to have the mindset of say failure is unacceptable, but you have to understand that it happens. And when it happens, we learn and we brush ourselves down and we go again, but also the way you handle anything in life becomes less brutal, if you like, the more you experience it, right? So when I did my first press conference at boxing with Audley Harrison and David Hay, I was sitting on my hands because they were shaking so much, right? And I stood up and I was talking, like this, and this. And everyone's like, wow, you're really confident up there. You're a great talker. I'm thinking, mate, you should have seen my hands. Now I've done 1,000 press conferences. I could go up there and speak all day with no script, right? If you're walking out to a fight and you're a fighter, the first time you walk out in that arena, the 10th time you walk out in that arena, just another day, and people who have longevity in business and in life have experienced loads of different failures. If I'm sitting next to my old man at a boxing show, when AJ got knocked out at Madison Square Garden by Andy Ruiz, I was like, almost like, Dad. He's like, listen, son, get in there, take it on a chin, bounce back. Right, okay.
Brilliant.
Then I walked back to my hotel through Manhattan at 4 o'clock in the morning. It was 3 miles, and I was just thinking, where do we go from here? And the next day we wake up, right, let's get this rematch sorted. Let's get back into camp. Let's win. And when we got the victory, it was so sweet, because you remember the pain. You have to feel the pain of failure. If it doesn't hurt, it don't mean enough to you.
Yep.
But remember that pain and use it as energy to come back stronger.
Eddie, thank you so much for your time. It has been a really interesting conversation. I think we found an Eddie Hearn who is as driven as ever, is as passionate as ever. I love the fact you only feel you've got 30% of where you need to go. But I also think that we've probably found an Eddie Hearn who is a lot more humble than 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I think it's a really good combination to keep the passion, but with the humbleness.
Good stuff. I've enjoyed it, guys. Feels like we've just had an hour of therapy. Thank you.
There you go.
Thanks, Eddie.
Please hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give us a thumbs up, leave a review, but somehow get involved with the High Performance Podcast and become part of our growing community. Thanks for being part of the adventure.